We're on page 321. That's the, 320. No, sorry. We're on page 320. 320. 320.
Moshe, can you send us another couple of pages, the next Maamar? Because we only have until 320. That's it.
I'll do it right now.
Yeah, just send. We're not going to get a chance to finish the whole Maamar. Just send another 2 pages. It's fine. The idea that when we're talking, the last thing was about the Taina Ka'odin, that the master's pleasure becomes your pleasure, and our in Avodah, in our service to Hashem, it's the idea that like Yoni asked about, and we explained that the joy of the Yid of God is your joy. That was the point. Now let's so we're on 320. We are.
I think we got up to like the 3rd line, but I think maybe we should go up a little bit. Maybe start from the
Okay. Ubefrat, the 2nd line, the 3rd word. More specifically, when the servant has some understanding of who his master is, shehu mufla, that his master is in a totally different category than he is. It's not that the servant and the master are in the same category. One is a little better than the other, but rather it's 2 different worlds. So when the servant realizes that, then the servant's pleasure is greater. Why? Because it realizes one story that I'm the happiest person. I'm working for Hashem. In that case, I'm working for the Rebbe. I told over a story yesterday, Moshe, about someone whose wife was complaining that he's not organized, and she said, basically, become a mensch. So he said, the fact that I'm working for the Rebbe, on the Sikhs and the Maamarim, I'm the biggest mensch. What does that mean? Not that he's a mensch. The Rebbe makes him a mensch. And obviously, if he needs to do this for the Rebbe, and he's disorganized because he's so occupied with working no day, no night, then that's the menschlichkeit that he's going to reach, at this point in his life. And we discussed that at length. If you have a chance, you should listen to the tape, to the YouTube, because it was a good discussion yesterday. Anyway, so here he says that when the servant recognizes who the master is, he says, wow, what a privilege that I have working for this master. So using this as an analogy, we can understand now the moral. In regard to accepting the yoke of heaven. The fulfillment of mitzvahs that comes as a result of accepting the yoke of heaven, is way ad infinitum. There's no comparison to the fulfillment of mitzvahs that is based on logic. You can't compare the two. One is driven by logic. When logic dries out, when logic gets boring, when logic is refuted, the result is also refuted. So this is basically like we learned earlier in the Maamar from the previous Maamar, Ila va'olol, right? Cause and effect. If the cause is weakened, if the cause is refuted, then the effect is. It just happened last night. Someone who started to come closer to Chasidus. He lives in Pesayek, a friend. He was trained. He was brought into Yiddishkeit in the more Litvische approach. And it's a long story how he got to Chabad, and Lubavitch was actually 2 Bacher and visiting him on Mivtzoyim on Friday. And first he laughed at them, and then he started to dialogue with them, thinking he's going to, show these young 15-year-olds they don't know what they're talking about, and they turned him upside down, and they made him look like a fool. and he's a lawyer. So he was blown away. These 15-year-olds are speaking the truth, and I'm the one that has an issue with Chabad because I was brought into Yiddishkeit in a way that Chabad was a taboo and all of that, which you all know what I'm talking about. So last night and now and over the years we learned Chasidus and he would ask me his questions and he about growing a beard and putting on a kapota and different things, and I guided him as much as possible and in a careful way. So last night he happened to see a few videos, which probably you guys have seen also online. Rabbi Groner speaking about Mashiach and the Rebbe being Mashiach and that whole topic. And there's a program called Stump the Rabbi that they've been putting up every week on the Chabad sites. So the last 2-3 they've had Rabbi Groner. They took from clips from before. Whether they planned it or they didn't plan it, I don't know. But it seems to me, and I think I know that I know, not I know. The sponsor of the project is Mashiachistic oriented. Okay? So I assume there's a slant in that direction. Well, these videos slanted in that direction, which is fine. I mean, I can handle it, but I'm not sure if the larger Frum community can handle it. I'm not sure, and I'm sure many would say absolutely not. Anyway, so he sends me an email or a WhatsApp. He sends me and says, I'm having a second thoughts about the Rebbe. So I wrote to him, and he was referring to these conversations that Rabbi Groner is sharing that he had with the Rebbe or observed the Rebbe, the different things that imply that the Rebbe thought of himself as a Mashiach. This is the way he understood those videos. And I could see one thinking that way. So I told him two things. One thing is, I've learned a long time ago, because I've been doing this for 25 plus years as writing and researching, don't trust and believe anyone. Unless you yourself have first-hand knowledge, or you have the knowledge from the primary source, or even a secondary source, if the source is really true, and very few secondary sources are true, it's hearsay. I mean, I'm now dealing with stories for a next book, and I can't tell you the inaccuracies and the mistakes, and I have to spend hours in calling people all over the world to try to pin down the more true detail, and I admit there's no perfection because the person who happened to might not be alive anymore. So all I'm saying, the first thing I said to him is, I don't care if it's Rabbi Groner or second in command to God. I don't believe anyone. I don't trust anybody. And I have a right to question them, like a lawyer, like a deposition. And if they don't allow me to question them, what they say is not true. I don't care. But the stupid world, excuse the expression, the whole stupid world believes everybody. Okay, so it's not my fault that you want to believe him. Number two, but he writes back, but he was so close to the Rebbe. Close shmos. We knew our Rebbe because we knew what he said publicly. His public statements is what you heard from him. And what we heard from him was in the late 80s, 87, 88, 89, they started to sing out of Farbrengen, Yechi Adonenu, this Rabbi Volpe from Eretz Yisrael, you probably know. He started it, and the Rebbe stopped in middle of the song, and he said, if you don't stop, I'm walking out of the Farbrengen. That we have on record. So that is the emes. Because the Rebbe said it. I don't need Groner, and I don't need Rabbi Yoel Khan, and I don't need God's assistant. I heard it from the Lubavitcher Rebbe. That's it. Number two, I said to him, number two is, what do you care if someone believes the story, and he wants to take it in a certain way. It bothers you. It bothers you. You know? And Rabbi Groner wasn't pushing. He was being interviewed. He was being asked. So he was sharing what he believes to be what the Rebbe said or what he heard. And if someone walks away and is aroused in a certain way, what does it bother you? No one's not putting on tefillin because of it. I'm telling you. Not 25 years later, and not even a year later, and not even a month later. Okay? And number 3, if your connection to the Rebbe are these videos and these type of things, I didn't say this to him, but I was going to say, it's better maybe you shouldn't be connected. Because a connection to a tzaddik is because we believe he is a conduit for God's will. He's the embodiment of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in this world, like Moshe Rabbeinu and David HaMelech. That is standard Jewish belief by those that believe in a Rebbe and the Litvish who believe in Gedolim or whatever. I don't know if they don't have that same emunah because they don't operate that way. But the whole Rabbanim, the whole system this is a Torah view, like we spoke about the last few shiurim, das Torah. So you're listening to a video and you're saying that this is Rabbi Groner's giving this over and in the Rebbe's name, and therefore you have questions because if the Rebbe passed away and he implied his Mashiach, so he's a false Mashiach, you make a whole pilpul. I said to him, you do better if at 7 in the morning you got on the Facebook or on our program and learned every day Chasidus with us. I promise you'll do much better than all of these things. And he wrote back, he agrees, he would do much better. But I understand his reaction. Now, why am I sharing this with you? Because just last night it happened, and here we're learning about the difference between doing a mitzvah as a result of reason or doing a mitzvah as a result of faith in God. And I extrapolate from that, Hillel, the same things with a tzaddik. Do you identify with a tzaddik because he is a tzaddik, meaning a conduit to Hashem? Or do you identify with him as a human being who happens to have an adjunct, which is called learning more, davening more, and all that? And if you do, then you're right. Rhyme and reason, cause and effect. You know, the previous Rebbe, our author, the Rebbe, he writes in the Sikhs, there are 3 types of Chasidim. There are Chasidim that are Chasidei Hanusach. You know, especially the turn of the century in America, in Philadelphia, in Baltimore, in New York, and all over, Chicago. There were many Chabad, there were many Hasidim, many Jews who came from Chabad Hasidim in Russia. Chabad was the largest Hasidic group in Russia, no question about it. In the thousands and maybe 50,000. I mean, tremendous. Most of them either became, their kids left, their grandkids left, and so the same thing happens, for example, to the Twersky family. Tremendous amount, but they didn't have as many Hasidim. But also, Russia basically purged Judaism. Okay, communism. This was a terrible, terrible plague. We talk about a terrible plague. This was a spiritual plague. So at the turn of the century, they come to America. They assimilate, and shortly there's nothing much left. But nevertheless, there were these shuls. There were like 5 shuls in Baltimore, 10 shuls in New York or more, on and on and on, and Chicago. And then you had a trickle of people in each community who lasted, who kept their frumkeit, 1910, 1920, 1930, and most of them, today their grandkids and great-grandkids are not Lubavitch. They have a sympathy for Lubavitch, so if they're able to write a check, they'll write a check. If they're able to host an event, they'll host an event. And when the Rebbe was alive, if they went to the Rebbe once in a while. And that's the way the Lubavitch movement, in a way, started in America. in those towns, like I said, Baltimore, Chicago, New York, Philadelphia, etc. Right? So the Rebbe says, the Friedrich Rebbe says, many of those were what we call Nusach, Chasidei HaNusach Lubavitch. What identified them as Lubavitchers? That they davened Nusach Ari of the Arizal of the Alter Rebbe. And that's it. They didn't learn Chasidus. They didn't grow their beard. They didn't go to Fabrengens, Then there were those, he says, who were, not only Chasidei HaNusach, they did some practices of Chabad. So, for example, in 1925, Rabbi Kramer, who was the one who kind of orchestrated the previous Rebbe coming to America, and he paid for it because, he was well off. And one brother was a lawyer, and they had a whole system. So I read in Yiddish an interesting report where for Yutes Kislev he sent out a letter to all the Lubavitcher shuls in the greater tri-state area, and he said it's like it was a milestone year of Yutes Kislev, and he's inviting everyone. We're making a Siyam Hashas, and he writes there. Specifically, in Lubavitcher Hasidim are more interested and careful about learning Gemara than other Hasidim. I never saw such a thing, but he writes it. Because the Alter Rebbe says in the Igeres HaKodesh, right, that on Yutes Kislev, you should finish Shas. And that's why we all take a Masechta, we try to, and all that, right? No other Rebbe, you don't see that in any other Hasidison. You learn Gemara, but I'm saying to make a formal issue of learning Gemara and finishing it all together, only the Alter Rebbe writes it. So Rabbi Kramer writes, Mr. Kramer, he wants everyone to come to this big meal. I don't think he even calls it a fabrengen, and that's the way it is. And I saw last year a clip from St. Louis, 1950s or 60s in St. Louis, inviting everyone to a shul. I'm not even sure it was a Lubavitcher shul for the Yutes Kislev Suda, the annual Yutes Kislev Suda. It's amazing. So these type of Yidden and these type of Hasidim were more than just davening the Nusach. They did something more, whether it's once a year Yutes Kislev or several times a year. And then the third category are, you could what we would call today the real Hasidim who practice, the Lubavitch Chabad minhagim and Chasidus, learn Chasidus and do the minhagim, like Yoni was saying, the Eitzim minhagi Chabad. They want to know what's the Chabad minhag, staying up Shavuos and when and how, daven with the minyan in early morning, daven later. These are the type, they're interested because they want to, they identify as a real Lubavitcher. So I said, so going back to the issue of doing something not because of reason, but doing it because you're committed to the cause, then your Rebbe becomes no less whether he said this statement or that statement. So I don't understand. Who cares? I'm not committed to him and to the bSha through him because of a statement. That's not the way. It's much deeper. This would be a practical result in one area of these two differences: Kabbalah soil because of the Rotzin Hashem versus Kabbalah soil because of the Bal HaRotzin. Any questions on this? Moshe, you're smiling, and I can see you thinking. And you're identifying a lot with what I said, right? Okay.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so.
Yeah. Anyway, it's not to shtech anyone, and again, in this instance, it's Chabad, Lubavitch, but it's in Yiddishkeit. Your Judaism. The Godel tells me we have to get to a point where it's between us and God. And naturally, we look for someone who can help us find the bSha. College students went into the Rebbe in the 50s or 60s, and they asked the Rebbe, what is a Rebbe? And the Rebbe said, a Rebbe is like the one who knows the right switch to turn on the light. He turns on your light. If you don't turn on, he's only the switch. But if you don't allow your light to be turned on when he turns on the light, you ain't going to be turned on. You're going to be off. It's going to be dark. And this is very important to understand with our yes, what? The internet's not working great?
No.
Okay.
It's fine.
Yes.
I was going to ask a question too. But
yes, Moshe.
It's okay. Go ahead.
So anyway, I'm just saying that. So when someone, it just came up last night, so it's fresh in my mind. When someone asks, and you have this. Oh, I don't want to be religious anymore, or I don't want to be do what Hashem wants because I see hypocrisy in the community. The same idea. Yeah, if your relationship to Hashem is through the community, then you're right. Then you're right. But it should be much deeper. The community is only a method, an application to the essence. You're connected to God because of community, or you're connected to Hashem because you love Hashem and you understand and you feel this is your life force. And the same is with a Rebbe. And I'm not saying this comes by osmosis. You have to work on it. Even a chassid, let's say, someone like myself who grew up in Lubavitch since my birth, you still have to work on it. You still have to think about it. You still have to meditate. You have to challenge yourself and focus and come up with a plan and a method and an ideology that you got it. You know what I'm saying? You got it. And that's the same as with Yiddishkeit. So the fact that there's hypocrisy in the community and there's issues, so what? What does it have to do with my connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu? So I don't go to that shul, I go to another shul. I won't ask this rabbi the shilas, I'll ask another rav the shilas. Yes, Moshe.
Just want to say, I was going to ask. I just want to say on that last note.
Oh wait, Moshe. Let Moshe Myers ask first. He was waiting. Yes, Moshe.
It's okay. I don't mind waiting. Whatever. Okay, as you wish.
Please.
What I'm going to say, I say with all respect, and I started studying with Chabad in Toronto after becoming Baal Tshuva, so to speak. So I say this with the greatest respect. I love Chabad and the Rabbi. I feel a connection. I have friends who are very connected, and I think what you're getting at, and maybe I'm seeing, is there is a slippery slope. And like you say, you don't judge the whole community of Chabad, or you don't judge a community by one or two people, what happens. But I guess the danger is that some people, it's human nature. That's the problem, really. It's not the Rebbe so much. But doesn't it set up a situation where some people can become like someone who's Mashiachist or fanatical or portrays that idea? That's where it seems to be that there is a bit of a slippery slope, a danger. And that's maybe what this fellow was getting at, and others have said. Because I've had to sometimes defend Chabad because I see the Rebbe and I love so much about Chabad. I'll just give you a quick example. I was with a group of guys at a get together, a mixture of all kinds of guys, and so I started. I was asked to say something. I quoted Rabbi Y.Y. Jacobson, and someone got up that I know very well from years, was very much more Litvish, whatever, and there was a mixture, Mizrahi, Sephardic, Chasidus, everything in the group, Ashkenazi, and he said, "I don't want to hear anything he says about that. Why are you quoting this guy? Do you know what they stand for?" I said, "What do you mean? You're going to go and quote him on Torah?" And he started yelling, and it was very uncomfortable. And I tried to, put it in perspective. The reason he said it was that there was a sheet made from a whole bunch of Rabbeim in Chabad, and I saw it down at later. The one I'm saying that it's down at the Merkaz, that says that he said that all these Rabbeim signed on saying that if anyone doesn't believe that Rebbe's Mashiach, it's a what do you call it? It's they have a chiyuv to believe that Rebbe's Mashiach. Everyone, not just in Chasidus.
Yeah, okay. I'm aware of that. As far as I'm concerned, is a refutation to that argument, and that's it. There's nothing more. We can argue and argue and argue. We're not going to get anywhere. It's two separate things, And you're right, it's human nature. So if we want to follow human nature, follow human nature. If you want to follow God's nature, then follow God's nature. Yes, Moshe.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Shkoyach.
Moshe.
Yeah,
I think you wanted Moshe to say something.
Yeah, he wanted to say something. Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to follow up with what Rabbi Dalfin, what you were speaking about before, just a moment about hypocrisy. So one of the things I always find fascinating, and I just see this all the time as a member in the community, as a parent, right, is that we, let's say, who's in this shir, let's say, for example, we can deal more or less with, let's say, issues of hypocrisy. We can filter them out. We can find what's the MS and, leave out the, let's say things that we,
the chaff.
Right, the chaff. But what I'm laughing a little bit in a sense inside because try to explain to a teenager or a young adult, right, hypocrisy or the whole issue of judge Yiddishkeit, judge Judaism by the Torah, not by Jews. That's all.
And that's why only when you are more mature are you able to think clearly and not allow all of the emotional stuff to get in the way because it's not looking at it objectively. Okay, enough said on this topic. Let's get back to the Maamar. So he says now, turn off.
Just one question.
Yes.
Rabbi, can I ask you one question?
One question.
My question is about because you brought up a very interesting point, and I feel this is a problem in the Yiddish world. I don't think it's a Chabad problem. I don't think it's a Breslov problem. It's a problem, of course, where there is no live and let live. Meaning, if the guy wants to believe that the Rebbe is Mashiach or the Rebbe is not Mashiach, whatever, it's just why should that affect me? I mean, I've been at Minyanim, Litvish Minyanim, where a Chabad guy gets in and they say, no, we have to wait for an 11. I mean, to the point where it's disgusting. It gets to a point where we've totally lost Yiddishkeit. We have lost Yiddishkeit. I tell you, my brother-in-law has a saying. He says, what does FRUM stand for? Food stamps, rent control, unemployment, and Medicaid. We have lost the essence of, the guy wants to believe these, the Seder, okay, fine, it doesn't, no skin off my back. Well, if he wants to believe that, he still keeps Shabbos, he still puts in. Why do I have to judge him? Who is it my business to judge this guy? I don't really understand where this comes from. Like, why do they keep it?
No.
Same thing.
Yoni, you're right, but, this person who wrote to me, he's talking about himself. He has a right to, he was asking me, he was telling me that he is shaking. That's legitimate. He's not, it's legitimate for him. He's not talking about you and I. He's talking about himself. He wasn't saying, you and you and we. He says, myself, I just don't understand this and get it. So it's not a contradiction between what you're saying, live and let live. Yeah, of course, listen. Like Moshe said before, Moshe Myers, live and let live, human nature is not to live and let live. It's the same thing with the Talmidei Rabbi Akiva. We just finished Lag Baimer.
Yeah.
Why not? Each one felt his Rebbe wanted the other way. So everyone puts the pressure on the other person. And the result was disastrous. So you're 100% right, live and let live. Nevertheless, we have halacha, and we have rabbanim, and we have rebbes, and we have gedolim. We can't throw, the whole system away because the system is based on the Torah. But as an individual, to squash someone else's approach is very wrong. I mean, let's take a simple example. Someone comes into Eish Kodesh with unshaved, unkempt and unclean, and everyone's dressed Shabbos so beautifully. What do you think the people there are thinking here? The answer. Most people are saying, what the heck is wrong with you? It's Shabbos. You don't want to wear a tie, don't wear a tie, but come in with a clean pair of pants and a clean shirt and look like a mensch and, well...
The Rebbe would run over to greet him. That's
Okay, the Rabbi would run over. The Rabbi, yeah, the Rabbi, because he's that type of person. But many people are not that way, and it's human nature. Like you say, human nature. What did the Rebbe do? What did the Lubavitch Rebbe do? Lubavitch Rebbe did, and this you have to know this, Moshe, to tell these people that maybe you or maybe your father came into a shul or a Chabad house, and you were either drugged up, stoned, or dirty because you were a hippie in the 1960s, and the Chabad Shliach, Schwartzy, Kunin, whoever it was, right, grabbed you, hugged you, and made you feel $1 million. And that's why today you're a frum Jew. And if not you, it's your friend. And if not your friend, it's your friend's kids. So never forget that. Because the person didn't know better. The person was rebelling against our frumkeit because he had such a bad experience in yeshiva, being hit and being told that they're, and all, when you'll be older, you'll understand and all of that. So we lost a whole generation of kids in the 50s and 60s. So and believe me, when I was in Bet Shemesh, I met some of these people who admitted to me because they wouldn't say it to others. If not for Chabad, I wouldn't be here with my grandkids playing on the swings. Okay, so again, and I'm just saying that it's so easy to become, something that you're really not. And imagine if I took this person, I would take him apart, that he would turn colors and ask me for forgiveness, and say you're right, but I wouldn't do that because it's not the right thing to do. But the truth is. And that's why a Jew like Rabbi Malinowitz, who had a background, who was a Torah Jew, he accepted everyone. And he was a big ish halacha. He was a real man of halacha and Torah. And yet he was broad enough that everyone has a place. So this live and let live is very true. At the very same time, like we've discussed many times, there's nothing wrong to share in the right way and in the right place, privately, say, I accept you the way it is. Someone comes to my house. He can come any way he wants. Then I have to go to a shul here in Borough Park. So I'll say to him, I can't be responsible if they're going to give you the eyes, if you're dressed a certain way. So what do you want to do? You want to go to shul? You want me to stay with you? You have to be sensitive, but at the same time, or you say before he comes, you might want to dress, in a certain way, so that if you want to come to shul with me, or you want to walk in the community, you conform. And some people hate that. They hate that idea of conforming, and so be it. And we have this with our own children and grandchildren, teenagers in the community. And it's a balancing act. Because if you're too strict, you lose them. If you're too loose, you also lose them. So you have to be in the middle. You have to be smart, and you have to know what to say, and you have to know when to be quiet. But again, for ourselves, that's for someone else. But for ourselves, live and let live. Yet at the same time, Kinep HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Let's go back to the Maamar. I want to finish it. Okay, so he says, we are 5 lines, Hillel, 5 lines on page 320. The last 2 words on the line. Do you have it? Ubefrat k'sheyovin. Hillel, you got it?
Yes.
Okay. Ubefrat k'sheyovin v'yakiras ha'emes. Specifically, his commitment to Hashem will be greater when he recognizes the truth. Begoidel haflos reimus odim, recognizing the great, wondrous exaltation of the Master. Wow, I got a job in the Queen's house. I'm sweeping the floors in the King's house. What greater thing could there be? Lahavdil. Vasher b'kiyumoi es pikudosoi. And when we fulfill the command and directive of the king, we cause a great pleasure and aroma, nachas ruach, for the king, because we do what he wants of us. And there's nothing greater, ukemayme, and as the statement goes in the Sifri, nachas ruach lefanai, regarding the karbonos, this is a nachas, a pleasure. Hashem says, before me, I get pleasure from it. Shomarti, since I said I want this to be done, v'naser etzayni, and my will has been done. So we create pleasure by Hashem, and that's what it's about. Sha'oz hariataynug oinig nifle ad bioid, then the pleasure is so much greater. Why? Because the tainug of the adon, the pleasure of the master, becomes your tainug. So whether I understand, whether I feel it, it's irrelevant. A chassid once told me, a Russian chassid who spent his time and gave his time in Russia in the hard times, he said, the Rebbe wrote to him, I told you this, but it's worth repeating, the Rebbe wrote to him in a letter, Rabbi so-and-so, and he gave him accolades. So when he had Yechidus with the Rebbe, I think in the 70s, he said to the Rebbe, I'm not no rabbi, I'm not no scholar, I'm a regular Yid. In general, that was the attitude of the Russian Lubavitch Chassidim. They were very humble, even if they were real rabbis and real scholars, but, it was not made into an issue. So he says to the Rebbe, he said in Yiddish, Ich fühl es nicht. Yoni, ich fühl es nicht. I don't feel these titles. Rebbe, what are you saying? Rabbi so-and-so and scholar so-and-so. I'm a regular Pasha to Yid, so ich fühl es nicht, what you wrote. And the Rebbe answered him, and he told this to me himself. The Rebbe said, feeling is nicht kein muz. Feeling is not required. It's not obligatory, Moshe. You feel it or you don't feel it. If the Rebbe didn't say the rest of the words, I'm going to paraphrase now. If I wrote it, then it's relevant to you. That's it. You don't feel it? Who says you have to feel it? In yeshiva, we used to say, when you feel something, you have a stomachache. Right? In Yiddish, aboich veitik. Aboich is a stomach, veitik means pain. If you feel, you got stomach problems. In other words, who cares? You do, you don't. You do what the Eibishter wants. That's what we're saying here. It's all about making a nachas ruach for the Eibishter. If we can make a nachas ruach for the Eibishter, that's the most important thing. Whether I feel it or I don't feel it, I understand it, I don't understand it. And he continues. V'zui mailis inyan hakdomas nasel nishma. Now you remember we began the Maamar asking the question why they got 2 crowns if the specialty is the prefacing of nasel nishma. So what's the answer? I want to answer the question. What's the answer? The answer is that the nasev and nishma is one idea. And if you're plugged into the prefacing of Nasev and Nishma, then your Nasa separately and your Nishma separately will be not concept, which means Kabbalah's oil, to the master of the will that will ignite your doing and it'll ignite your understanding. So you'll understand differently and you will do differently. Why? Because I'm going with the attitude of prefacing Nasev and Nishma, which means the idea of accepting the yoke of Hashem, the Baal HaRotzeh. That's what he says here. V'zui mailas inyan akdomas Nasev Nishma. This is the virtue and the benefit of prefacing Nasev Nishma. Shu b'chinas u'madregas Kabbalah soil ha'yosher nailas. It's the higher level of Kabbalah soil. So to answer the question, why did the angels give us 2 crowns and not 1? Because there are 2 activities, Hillel. One activity is we shall do. Another activity is we shall understand. What prompts these activities to be not just good, but special and the best is one inyan, is one idea. Hakdomas nasel nishma. So they got 2 crowns because each is a different activity. But what prompted them and why they got the 2 crowns is because of one idea, the prefacing Nasa v'Nishma. That is the short answer to the question that he began at the beginning. Yes, Yoni? I don't hear you, Yoni.
Yes, someone.
Now I hear you. Now I hear you.
Okay. So my question is, when the Rebbe was talking to that guy, right? When he was telling that you don't have to feel, you think that he was saying that first let it first go into your head, let it permeate in your head, meaning do what you need to do the right thing, keep the mitzvahs, keep the Torah, and then eventually you'll get the feeling? Or he was just saying...
No, I don't see it that way. No, he was telling him that feeling is not a requisite for serving God. And if a tzaddik addresses you with certain accolades, if you believe in that tzaddik, it's like God saying you're a rabbi and a scholar, and just accept it. The fact that you don't feel it, you don't have to. And if you really want to feel it, work on it. Learn more. That's where what you're saying comes into play. But not that you need to do that. You hear the difference? Yoni, I want to make sure you understand the difference between whether I'm obliged to do that. First of all, let me make myself clear. Maybe I didn't say it. We're talking about a title, an accolade. We're not talking about loving Hashem and fearing God, which you need to feel in your heart. Right? You can't compare the two. Avas Hashem and Yiras Hashem, like we learned in the Maamar, Chayvus Halavavas, mitzvahs that are heartfelt obligations are necessary. Like Dr. Rebbe explains in Tanya. But accolades aren't. This chassid was just saying to the Rebbe, like, what are you giving? Calls you a certain way or says something about you a certain way. It is that way. It is that way. Now, it's up to you. You want to discover it and explore it, go for it. You don't want to, don't go for it. But it doesn't detract from the truth that the tzaddik, says about you in any way, shape, or form. And it's a perspective, This whole thing is a perspective. The bSha says, listen, let me put it this way to make it more practical. Hashem says to us, you are my children. You are special. So we have to know that we are most special, and the kids have to know this, and no one is dispensable. Everyone is indispensable. And that's the truth. That is the emes. Now, to find that, you need to work. You need to have guidance. But you have to start from the yesod, from the foundation. If Hashem created you, you're needed. And the world is not the same without you. bSha, you hear what? This is very important for you to share, with those that you've spoken to me about. There's no person that's indispensable. Every person is needed if they're alive on earth. I don't care if they're not well. I don't care if they're, sitting around on a couch and not doing anything. You have to get them to move. You have to get them, and this is part of Yiddishkeit. People who had depression, the Rebbe told them, do volunteer work, stuff envelopes, go out for a walk. I've told people who've asked me, you're not in a good mood, go downstairs and go into, what's the shul, the Minyan Factory shul on Dolev, Masas Mordechai, right? Just go in there, smile, say hello, walk around, take a tea, take a coffee, say hello. You'll feel better. Get out. Get yourself out. Sometimes you're so depressed you can't get out. Go to the water. You can't do it yourself. You would do a big mitzvah if a friend comes and takes you. So every person is needed. You'll be amazed how, I say the same thing in my research, in historical research. People say, well, you know the story already. What do you have to hear from me? I said the way you hear it and the way I hear it are two different ways of hearing it. I'm coming from a whole different vantage point because that's my job, my profession. I write, I research, so you might say something that seems so inconsequential, and for me it's a gold mine. And the same as in your work, Moshe, you draw a certain thing that the average person who's not studied in art has no understanding. But for you see magnificence in it. Or the story is, when someone asked the Rebbe, of course, how can you give so many dollars every Sunday? You're so tired. You're standing on your feet. The Rebbe said, tired? Every Yid is a diamond. Another diamond. I'm helping another diamond and another diamond. Who doesn't want to count diamonds? You don't want to count sand, but diamonds you want to count. So it's the perspective. Are you counting sand or you're counting diamonds? The Rebbe saw every Yid as a diamond. So there's no, and this is part of what we're learning here in the Maamar. The Hakdamas Nasa V'Nishma means the commitment to the bSha. In other words, you need to think how would God think about the situation? Don't analyze it from the human perspective, like you said before, Moshe. Human nature. Human nature is many times narishkeit, nonsense, ego, gossip, lashon hara, evil, hatred. That's human nature. Don't look at human nature. Go for God nature. Chevra, we'll continue tomorrow in Mitzvah, the last class before Yom Tov. And because we have, of course, an extra day. So Thursday, Friday, and we'll come back with Shem Sunday. Will be the next time we'll learn. And we'll start a new Maamar. I'll choose a Maamar. And I might want to do a Maamar in the third volume of these series, Maamar Melukotim. I'll let you know, but if I choose that, I'll let Moshe know. Moshe, hopefully, you have all 3 volumes, Moshe? You do? Yes. Okay, so you can send out, and those that have the actual Sfarim, I'm thinking of, because we pretty much did many of the Maamarim here in volume 2, and we did most of the Maamarim in volume 1, so I'm thinking going now to volume 3, but I have to see if it's the right, type of Maamarim I want to teach. And we'll see everyone tomorrow. Have a great day. Sei gesund. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Take care. Take care.